I feel like a lot of people aren't completely aware or just haven't been talking about what Terry Rozier's doing this season. Luckily, I have him on my fantasy team, so let me clue you in. He's averaging over 23 points, about 6.5 assists, while only turning the ball over twice. Clearly, the Heat were aware of this because they went out and traded for him, and I think his skill set actually fills a lot of gaps for them. The first thing I want to talk about is speed, and I'm not talking about how fast he runs, but more in terms of playstyle. The Heat are 29th in pace this season. They're not a team that's looking to get out at every opportunity, approaching things a bit more methodically, but they have guys who like to play with pace or even excel in that regard, such as Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and Caleb Martin. I think this is something Rozier brings to the table. He's a very good shot creator in transition, not just for himself but others as well, so we could see Miami get some easy offense going in the open floor. That's a small thing though. The main reason they traded for Terry is what he's capable of doing in the half court with the ball in his hands. He's got a really good handle and is great at changing speeds, two ingredients that help him consistently get into the defense. And when a rim protector steps in front of him, he'll make the right pass. His use of hesitations is especially deadly. Here he starts on a drive left, pulls back into that hezi before driving right, which leaves him with an easy lane to the cup. Despite standing 6'1", he's very lengthy, so on a play like this where his initial lane gets taken away, he can cover quite a bit of ground with a counter spin and extend his arm to kiss it off the glass. I definitely wouldn't say he's a great finisher by any means, but the volume at which he gets to the rim still forces the defense to respect it, and when a shot blocker sits back, giving him some space, he's got a real nice float game to fall back on. In general, his ability to score from the mid-range makes his drives much tougher to defend. This one starts with him splitting a screen, and again you'll see that change of speed, but to instead stop on a dime, getting some separation for a jumper. The mid-range scoring helps him on plays where he wants to attack the rim but doesn't really have an angle. He can step back into open space and it's still a quality shot. It also gives him an option to attack softer pick and roll coverages like a deep drop. Sabonis is only focused on protecting the middle, so once again he just steps back for a wide open jumper. Another way he's able to counter drop coverage is through his pull-up three-point shooting. He's great at creating space for himself, this time using his pivot to put Hero in the spin cycle, and with Bam and drop, there's nobody to pick him up off a screen. Over the last 3 seasons, he's hit just under 35% of his off-the-dribble threes on pretty solid volume. It might not sound too efficient, but it's good for the 62nd percentile, and includes an uncharacteristically bad shooting season from last year. It's a smaller sample this season, but currently he's shooting over 39% on about 5 attempts a game. That's some pretty elite stuff, and it's worth noting that he takes some really tough shots. Vooch comes up near the level of this screen, yet Terry still chooses to pull the trigger, and the big man's just a couple inches away from actually blocking the three, gets called for a landing space foul, and the man's got a chance at a 4-point play. That multifaceted scoring threat makes Rozier a really tough cover when working off of ball screens. Of course you have to worry about him turning the corner on a drive, this time using his length to set up one of those floaters, but he'll also use the threat of those drives to create other opportunities, starting an attack only to bump the big man while stepping back to the perimeter, which leaves him with a ton of space from 3. So, quite often, a second defender has to meet him early to slow his momentum, but he can also play the patient game, keeping his dribble live as he searches for a lane, and once he finds it, exploding downhill and getting to a layup. Or he can make reads as a playmaker. The big comes up in a high drop to close that space on the jumper, which he counters with a sharp bounce pass to the roller for 2. And here's virtually the exact same play, except this time the weak side defender is going to slide over to take away the roll, so the corner dives and Terry hits him on a lob. This right here is the key, because if you asked me what the Heat lack most, it's advantage creation. Of course, Jimmy's their #1 guy, but he has a weirdly unique style of play. He can get you 20, even 30 points a game in a playoff series, or if you're Milwaukee, he'll put up 38 a game. But in all seriousness, it's not the same type of 38 you find in most stars. He'll get a couple buckets off of cuts, maybe some putbacks, he'll get a mismatch and seal off position for a few dunks. Essentially, he does the little things to push his team forward like a role player, but then he also has a really strong mid-post isolation game, and the combination of those two traits gets you to those scoring numbers. Now, there are obviously ways for him to get the defense in rotation. Primarily, it's through putting pressure on the rim. He's got a really good drive and kick game, and Miami's got shooters, so that works. Or it could be by a team doubling him in isolation, bringing over aggressive help early, but that actually doesn't happen as much. What we've seen in the playoffs is that teams are more comfortable leaving him one-on-one and having him take a bunch of shots. And because he has virtually no off-the-dribble three-point threat, he's not a guy who you can just throw in spread pick and roll and put the defense into a panic. Thankfully, they have Tyler Hero for that, who has the outside shooting threat that Jimmy lacks and a pretty nice mid-range game to go along with it. But the problem with him is that he puts virtually no pressure at all on the rim. This season, he's taking about 2 shots at the rim every 75 possessions and making 42% of them. We're talking about one of the worst interior scorers in the league. That means when he runs pick and roll, teams can over-index on his shooting, knowing that they don't have to worry about him turning the corner, and he's not an advanced enough passer to pick apart rotations behind the play. So with that out of the way, now I can say that I actually think they rely on Duncan Robinson to be their primary advantage creator. For him, it's the movement shooting. They set up the dribble handoff actions or two-man game with Bam, and you can't give the guy any space at all or he's burning you with tough threes. Close that space, he's making the right pass, creating a 4-on-3 for Bam to attack, which is a situation he excels in. He's also added more to his game off the dribble, but still isn't a guy who's going to really hurt the defense as a slasher or inside the arc scorer, and of course he doesn't have a good enough handle to set up traditional pick and rolls. It pretty much all starts with him running off ball. This is where Terry Rozier makes a huge difference. He's got the 3-point shooting, he's got the handle and slashing game to put pressure on the rim. He's got the in-between game to attack defenses who force him into the mid-range, and he's got the passing to create for his team if he does draw added attention. I think this could be super important in getting more value out of Bam, who's shown to be an incredible screen and roll guy, but without the ball handler to maximize it. Here's a look at every qualifying pick and roll ball handler for the Heat this season. They've got 8 of them. Of those, only 2 guys really run it at volume. Jimmy and Hero, neither of which are very efficient. Their most efficient handler has actually been Robinson, but obviously with his limitations, it isn't a consistent thing for them. And here's who they traded to get Terry, 37-year-old Kyle Lowry. Now, let's add Terry to the graph. Right now, he's 12th in the NBA in volume and in the 94th percentile in efficiency. We're talking about an elite pick and roll scorer. He's also comfortable playing on the move with all of the same threats, so you still get that dribble handoff game with Bam. Now, obviously the Heat aren't going to build some heliocentric offense around Terry, that's not what I'm saying, but the fact that he executes a ton of things they like to do at a higher level than the guys they currently do it with should have a pretty nice effect on the team's offensive production. And in addition to everything I've talked about, he can also play away from the ball. Primarily, it's the shooting. He's hit over 44% of his wide open threes over the last 3 seasons. Definitely not someone who can be left open. But like I said, he can also play off of movement. So if you want to run him off of screens, he can shoot or attack off the catch. In these spots, he's great at making quick reads, where he of course demands a closeout, but can also get into the defense, and he'll either score or continue to make plays for others. The offensive fit is obvious, and for a team that's currently ranked as the number 21 offense, it's a pretty big deal. Their identity remains the defense though, and they're replacing Lowry, who even in old age has remained a quality defender, with Terry Rozier, who's this giant question mark. I say that because it's virtually impossible to get a good feel for someone's defensive capabilities when they've spent the last 5 years playing for a below average defense that as a team only eclipsed 500 once. So I'll be the first to say, I don't really know at all what to expect. There's one thing for sure, when the playoffs roll around, this team has consistently found ways to shut down elite offenses even with weaker personnel on the floor. Some of that comes down to coaching, some of it comes down to the brilliance of Jimmy and Bam, all of it comes down to buy-in. Will Rozier buy in? We'll have to wait and see. But with the type of strategy that Miami plays in the playoffs, the aggressive helping, sitting in lanes, and forcing ball handlers into really tough passes, I'd say that Rozier's 6'8" wingspan definitely fits the mold. Either way, this is a move for their offense, adding a 3-level creator who can run the pick and roll, play in isolation, or away from the ball, to a team that really doesn't have that should take them to another level. I know I'm excited to see them out on the floor hooping, and for him to continue putting up numbers for my fantasy team. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of the trade. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.